Dun, 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 dun. Insert the music here. Insert the music here. All right. Good evening and welcome to Merriwether's World. I am your host, Dr. Mark Merriwether Vorderbruggen, broadcasting to you live from one end of the dining room table. My world is a small world. Hey, good evening, Kathleen. So for those of you who don't know me, I am the creator of Foraging Texas. I am the author of Idiot's Guide Foraging and many, 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 many other articles and stuff about foraging edible and medicinal plants, not just in Texas, but really all across North America. And I'm seeing it's not all going up there. That's okay. Hey, we got people. Uncommon Bees, Deborah, Jennifer. Hey, Deanna, the tribe gathers. Hey, Kriv388. I am unfamiliar with you. A new person. Yay, new person, new person. We like new people. Okay, so as usual, got to start the show with some housekeeping stuff. One thing I am going to do is change things up a little. Instead of having 15 minutes of sponsor stuff right at the beginning, actually, I'm going to spread it out. And I got a little timer doohickey thingy here to help me have commercial breaks. Because as much as I love doing this, it's not something that's done for free. And so I have a few sponsors that help some, and I got to give shouts out to them. So before we do that, I got to do some shout outs to myself. Oh, hey, Caesar. Oh, Caesar. Okay. I remember you. Okay. Gotcha. Okay. Starting, of course, I would be remiss if I didn't mention Medicine Man Plant Co. So where did my Medicine Man Plant Co? Oh. So maker of fine ancient plants for modern issue type stuff. Check it out. We've got a bunch of different things out now and more on the way. Also, just put these out here and then we'll jump into tinctures. So come on, you. There we go. Okay, so whoops. Of course, I just put up a link. I'm trying to put up a link. It looks like it's thinking about putting up a link to my book, Idiot's Guide copy. Remember, it's not just for Texas. The publisher has wanted it to cover all of North America. So there are 70 easy to find, easy to use plants and mushrooms. And of course, big detailed pictures of everything. And if there's mimics and all this sort of stuff, good stuff you need to know. Important note, especially in regards to tonight, there is not any medicinal information. The publisher did not want that. So you got to jump back over to the Foraging Texas website and look up at the medicinal properties that are listed for the plants there. So cool. Also, of course, the Amazon shop, the Foraging Texas Amazon shop. And there should have been a link for that thrown up. And looking. Yes. Okay. Well, to some of you, it's saying an error occurred. But yeah, so if you go there, buy anything from that. I have the Learning to Be a Forager broken into 6 steps, each growing on the previous one, but the books and gears and stuff that really will bring you to the next level and the next level and the next level. So be sure to check that out. Hey, new watcher, Teresa Stevens Hall. Good evening and welcome to the tribe. So cool. Those of you who want to sponsor me directly, and by directly, I mean indirectly, there is the Amazon wish list that you can find there. And then, of course, the Cafe Press, different Foraging Texas t-shirts and hoodies and bags and water bottles and all that cool stuff. Okay, so we got that out of the way. I'm going to set the timer thingy for 10 minutes here, I think. Or maybe not. I don't know. I stole this from my wife. I actually have no idea how to use it. It's beeping. I think it's working. Okay, so tonight, without further ado, we are talking tinctures. And, because I'm a big fan of tincturing stuff. I don't know if you can do this here, but all sorts of tinctures there on the floor. Because a nice, cool, dark place is a good place to keep them. So tonight we're going to go over my basic rules of thumbs and ratios and all that stuff for making tinctures. Let me just adjust that a little there. And that's not going anywhere. That's okay, good enough. So we're going to cover alcohol choices, how to prepare the plants, how to make glycerate, double extraction of mushrooms, all that we're going to try and cruise through. If we end up going a little long, we go a little long. Most people don't seem to mind that. So let's start with, why are you making a tincture as opposed to just letting the plants dry and be used as a tea? A lot of plants, dry tea, herbal tea is a great way of taking the medicine. The problem, relatively speaking, is that the dried herbal material, it has a lifespan. The basic rule of thumb is the dried plant, once the plant is available again, throw out the old stuff, compost it. Don't just throw it in the garbage, please compost. But compost, last year's herbs and replace them with this year's herbs. So, and there's usually a gap because the drying process takes time. So long story short, there may be sections of the year when you don't have something available to make a tea out of because it's aged beyond use. Now with tinctures, alcohol-based tinctures, when you have at least 40% alcohol, 80 proof, those are considered shelf-stable and preserved indefinitely. So they pretty much, once you've extracted it into the alcohol, and as long as you keep it out of the light and keep it in a very small bottle with very little headspace, so there's not a lot of oxygen floating around in there, the tinctures are considered to be, basically immortal. For years and years and years, they remain their powers. So just the storage and long-term storage of herbs, I generally find, for me, works better as a tincture, especially if you get really crazy busy and you don't have time to harvest something, or, for some other reason, it's a bad year. There's storms that, the few weeks when the plant would be ripe for picking, things like that. So for me, I find a tincture just to be way more convenient because I have this stuff waiting for me there. And of course, also convenience in use. With tea, you got to boil water, you got to get the teacup, you got to soak, you got usually some little steel mesh ball that the tea is soaking in. You got to clean that out. You got to poke, the out of all the little holes, things like that. So making tea is kind of, in my opinion, more work than it's usually worth. Later on, I'll do a shout out to Ricardo Shilly Shally and Herbs. He makes an absolutely wonderful battle mage tea, especially designed for me. We'll talk about that then. But in the long run, the tinctures, pour it in a tablespoon, drink it down, or you add it as almost like a bitter in a cocktail. It's just easier. It's a couple of drops from a dropper or a teaspoon, and you're good. So very, nothing to I guess wash the spoon, but just the convenience and the storage factor of tinctures are great. Okay, so let's talk first about alcohol choice. And it generally boils down to, do you want to use something that's, 190 proof? So, what is that, 95% alcohol? Or do you want to use, your vodka? If it can focus here, focus. But this is this is the 42 proof. So we got a little extra wiggle room there. Like I said, you want at least 40 proof. Going a little higher gives you a little bit of stability. But which do you use? Do you use the diluted stuff that's only approximately half alcohol, or do you use the stuff that's really strong? Well, for the most part, it doesn't matter for the plants. What matters is the plant fresh or dried. So let's go sideways for a second and talk about the plants. Remember, the plants have a cell wall. It's this hard, rigid structure that keeps everything inside the cell inside and everything outside the cell outside. So if you just take fresh plants and put them, say, in the vodka, the 42 proof vodka, those leaves will float around and they're happily floating around, but not a lot of the compounds are going to be extracted through that cell wall because it's intact. There might be some right along the cut edges, but you're not going to get anything out. The concentration of the alcohol in the vodka is not strong enough to really draw anything out. Now, if you put the intact green leaves in the 190 proof stuff, now something happens. So going back to chemistry, what nature really, really, really wants is an equal distribution of stuff. So if you have, kind of like nature abhors a vacuum. If you have a vacuum and you have a gas, the gas wants to equally disperse into that vacuum and fill it so each molecule is atom or molecule, depending on the type of gas, is equally spread out from one another. So it's a uniform dispersion. Now, in the case of 190 proof alcohol, it's extremely concentrated alcohol, while inside the cells, it is water with a bunch of other stuff in there. And at that point, nature really doesn't like that situation. So the green cells, that water in there is just really, 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 it senses that alcohol out there. It's like me back in grad school. I know there's alcohol out there. So it will actually rupture open the cell and flow out and dragging all the, the plant goodies, the cellular goodies and molecules and compounds into this Everclear, or, in this case, the Nikolai 190 proof. But all that water, the universe just wants it in that alcohol so badly that the force ruptures the cell's walls and drags everything out there into the 190 proof. So the 190 proof, it's strong enough to actually cause the green plant cells to rupture. Remember, there's a lot of water in the cell walls. So that water is going to flow out, like I said, bring all the magic, medicinal compounds with it, but it's going to end up diluting the concentration of ethanol in the 190 proof. And basically, if you do the ratios that we'll talk about in a little bit, the end result is the 190 proof alcohol gets diluted down to around the 80 proof. So 40% alcohol. Was I saying 40 proof earlier? I meant 80 proof. So 40% alcohol, 80 proof. Was at 80 proof alcohol, 40% alcohol, it's shelf stable. But anyway, the Everclear or the other 190 proof stuff draws out the water, all the compounds, and dilutes down to that 80 proof range. So if you are using fresh green plants, you want to use the really high potency stuff, the 190 proof stuff. If you have let your plants air dry, like I always recommend doing, remember there's an enzyme in most plants that when a plant realizes it's dead and the circulation stops, no more water is flowing to it, it goes, you know what, I'm pretty sure I'm dead. That enzyme starts chewing holes in the cell wall. And once they get big enough, and it's been going on for a while, the water evaporates out through those holes. And then because without any water present, the enzyme action stops. And, everything is just in a, plant jerky at that status. But plant jerky with lots of holes in the cell walls. So now when you crumble up the plant and drop it in the vodka,
There are escape routes for the vodka. Whoop. Stop. 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 I don't know how to stop this. There. When in doubt, turn it off. Okay, so when you put the dried plant in the 80 proof vodka, or between 80 and 100, at that point the vodka will flow in and out of those openings in the cell walls, the water and the vodka, and then draw those molecules out because they want to be equally dispersed through the alcohol. So dried plants, and usually let them dry 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, something like that, to the point where they're brittle. If they're brittle and crackly and crumbly, they're ready to be put in the vodka. But the green plants, we put in the 190 proof stuff. Okay, that was beepy noise. So I need to do a shout out to two sponsors here. First, Wazoo Survival, makers of all sorts of cool survival gear, including the Wazoo Survival bandana that was made a joint project between me, Nicole Appelian, and Wazoo Survival. And Wazoo is the one paying for the StreamYard account that allows me to do these broadcasts. So yay them. Okay, and then the other sponsor I need to do a shout out is Arbor True. And hey, you know what? I guess I should have done this before. But if you are looking for a tree doctor pretty much anywhere in the Gulf Coast region, you want to talk to Arbor True. Not only do they have some of the top tree doctors, trained scientist tree doctors out there, but also, all the tree climbers and gear and bonded and insured. And not only do they do trees, but they can treat your entire yard. They have a new patented material that turns pretty much every plant into a nitrogen fixing plant, which is really, really, really awesome. But if you have a tree that is threatening, your house, and you want to see how it can be pruned to save, give Arbor True a call. And then, of course, the Wazoo bandana, great for, those instantaneous masks that we seem to need nowadays. All right. Back to me. So we know fresh green plants go in the 190, dried plants go in the 80 to 100 proof. So the next question is, how much? Because that plays a rule of thumb there too. And one thing I want to point out is, in the end, there are a bunch. If you look online, there's going to be a bunch of different people, all with their own ratios. The key thing to remember is you want to do, whatever ratio you pick, do everything the same, regardless of the plant. If it's goldenrod, do goldenrod the same way as you're doing self-heal, as sage, as pine needles, as, whatever. So you just want to be consistent, especially year to year. When you're making a new batch, let's say you've used up all your goldenrod tincture, you're making some new stuff, you want to keep the same ratio that you used last time. The reason being is so you kind of have a consistent result. Now, when you are dropping plants in alcohol, the initial plant, there can be a fairly large variability in the concentration of the medicinal compounds in it. So, anywhere from here, to here. And so your elixir, or your tincture, you're not quite sure how much of the medicinal properties you have in it. So it's kind of a trial and error to figure out how much you need to take to get the effect you need or you want. And then the next year, when you do it again and you make some new one, assuming you ran out, at least if you start with the same ratios, you kind of have a starting point. You start there and hope that if the plants are harvested at the same time of the year from the same location, they're probably, in that case, going to be more consistent in the concentrations. So the end result is just so your tinctures are consistent from batch to batch. Okay. I see a really good question, so I want to jump on this quick. So, Rachel, how does a dehydrator compare to air drying? Any difference? Yes, dehydrators are terrible for drying herbs for two big reasons. One, the dehydrator rapidly takes the water out. There are little tiny pores in the plants, and with the heat from the dehydrator and the fan, it's enough to dry out the plant. But the end result is all the cell walls are still tightly sealed. So then when you crumple it up and drop it into the alcohol, a majority of the stuff is going to be still trapped in the cells and cannot come out. You need that 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks of air drying for that enzyme to actively open up the cell walls. The other thing with the heat and the breeze, usually most of the dehydrators have a breeze, is they are going to extract some of the more volatile oils. Think essential oils and the volatile oils, a lot of them that have some of the properties you want. So by heating the plant up, you're either getting rid of some of the medicinal compounds, and the ones that remain are going to stay locked in the cells. So yeah, dehydrators, if you are using an herb for medicinal or even food flavor type stuff, please don't dehydrate it. Okay. So ratios. So like I said, the key there is just being consistent. So because it's easiest, let's start with the 190 proof with a fresh plant. So first thing, you want to take the plant, you want to chop it up, and then you want to put it in a jar, and you want to leave about, I have 2 fingers here, but what I really want to show is 1 inch of headspace. Do I have a jar? Okay, yeah, okay. So you have a jar, you're filling it up with chopped loosely. You're not packing it tight. You need it somewhat loose so the stuff can flow through it. So you're not jamming it in there, but firmly packed, firm but loose. There's some trial and error in there. So in this case, you would fill it up to about 1 inch from the top, well, a little less than 1 inch from the top. So you'll have this much plant material in there. And then you start adding the 190 proof until it's about 1 inch over. So you're going to fill that almost up to the very lid, and then crank it down, label it, the plant, the solvent, in this case, the 190 proof, and the date, and you're good. At this point, set it someplace cool, dark, out of the sunlight, but where you remember to shake it every day, because you want to shake it. Because you want to, before you put the lid on, you want to take some sort of stick or chopstick or poke around in there. It's called muddling or puddling. You want to free up any air bubbles. You don't want any air trapped amongst the leaves or the flowers or the chopped up fruit or whatever. So you poke around, try and get as much of the air bubbles out as you can. Then cap it, label it, shake it, set it, every day shake it. And really, I recommend at least 8 weeks. So 2 months, somewhere where you're going to shake it. Different people go different lengths of time, but I just 2 months later, it's time to strain out the material. So after, 8 weeks of shaking once a day, just shake it, shake, you're ready to strain out the material. So what I use for that, is, a coffee press. And so usually I'm working on a quart jar size. So I'll pour, decant as much of the quart off into here. Use this to push any plant material down, pour off any of the tincture that I want. And then, pour in the rest, squeeze it down, squeeze. You got to use a lot of force and pour off the tincture. and then take this out, and then you're going to have a bunch of plant material in here. Dump that into some cheesecloth, or hey, the foraging bandana, because that would be cool. And then, make a ball and just squeeze and twist and squeeze every little bit of that tincture out of the plant into another jar. Try and keep any plant material out of it at that point. But then, yeah, you're good. You now have the alcohol, it's been diluted from the 190 down to around 80 proof. So it's still going to be shelf stable. And it's good to go. All right. So that's the green plants. So fill the jar up just so you have enough for 1 inch of the 190 proof above the plant. Cap it, shake it once a day for 8 weeks. Okay. Good there. All right, just checking. Oh, you know what? I guess I probably should have started this again. Okay. All right. I need a sip of water. I don't know if you can see, but it's some roselle hibiscus calyxes in the water. Okay, so that was the green plants. Now, if you have dried plants, what are the ratios there? The basic rule of thumb with dried plants, remember, the dried plants are much more concentrated. You've taken out 80% of their mass, 80% of their volume by, the water evaporating away. And so you have a lot of plant material. So in the case of dry, you know what, let me do this here first. Let me, actually, it's more important with this one. Let me actually put this up here. This is just okay. So you basically want 1 part dried plant material and 5 parts of the 80 to 100 proof vodka. So it sounds like it's pretty dilute, but it's not. Especially with the dried concentrated plants, it's like, 20% of the green plant you have. So by putting 80% in there, sorry, by putting 1 part plant, 5 parts alcohol, you basically end up very close to the same as when you're putting 1 inch over the green. So the 1 part plant, 5 part, vodka, a good rule of thumb is think 5 ounces of dried plant in a 1 quart bottle. Do I have? Oh, well, so, the 1 quart bottle is like this. This is some cleavers from 2018, but I've already taken the cleavers out. But yeah, so 5 ounces of dried plant material in a quart jar filled up, with as little headspace as possible, with the 80 proof to 100 proof vodka. And again, label it, muddle it. It's a lot easier to get the air bubbles out of that because just shaking a little, because you have less areas to trap the air bubbles. Just shaking it a little, will get rid of free up the air bubbles. If you want, after shaking it the first time and letting it sit some, the next day, open it up a crack to let, some of the air out, and maybe put a little dash of vodka back in there. But then just seal it up, let it sit. Again, 8 weeks is what is that? Focus. There we go. Nope. Okay. So let it sit for about 8 weeks to get that diffusion of the vodka and water into the cells, and then bringing out the medicinal compounds, and just let it sit there. And then again, after 8 weeks, you go back, you got your coffee press, you press out the plant material, you strain out the alcohol, and then take the plant material with your Wazoo survival bandana and use that to squeeze squeeze out the last bits of drops, and you're good to go with the dried plant. Okay. Okay. So, thank you, Ricardo, for answering the people's questions. I appreciate that. Wade, have a goldenrod tincture I made a year ago and never strained. Still usable? Oh, hell yeah. Yeah. Nothing is going to, there's no problem with that. I probably have things at least that old. Yeah. So, well, okay. So like this is Rishi and vodka. Ooh, with the uncommon bees. So Rishi and vodka from last year from, I guess that was just back in November. So it's not that old, but yeah. If you leave the plant material in there, that's not a problem. It's stable and it is an equilibrium. So, at some point it'll reach that maximum dispersion and just hang out there. So it doesn't really improve it any, but it doesn't hurt it any. All right. Yeah. Well, and with the dried stuff, yeah, still shake it every day. Oh, Kelsey, here's a good question. Can you use whiskey instead of vodka? Yes. If you like the flavor of whiskey, as long as it's 80 to 100 proof, you're good to go. The one thing I do not recommend using, the one alcohol I do not recommend is gin. The reason is gin already has a bunch of herbs in it. A decent quality gin probably has 14 different herbs in it already. And usually the recipe is somewhat secret. And so you may not know what sort of interactions and medicinal properties the gin is going to have versus the other herbs you're putting in there and so forth. Yeah, don't use gin, but scotch, whiskey, rum, tequila. I've done, no, somewhere I have pine pollen in tequila. So it's just, any of the basic alcohols, brandy. Did I mention brandy? Yeah. Traditionally, vodka is used because it has the least of anything. It's basically just water and alcohol. But yeah, any of the other 80 to 100 proof type stuff is good. Okay. Where is it? I just okay, Sherry, yes. If you have fresh cans and lids, that you just bought from Walmart or whatever, they still often have a little residual oil from the manufacturing process. So go ahead and scrub them out really well. Put the jars in the dishwasher and just run them through the dishwasher. That'll be fine. And then the lids themselves, just hand wash them and let them air dry. Once you have the alcohol in there, the alcohol content is going to be high enough that nothing's going to grow in it. But you do want to shake it and you do want to minimize the headspace. Keep in mind, if the plant is floating, there is a possibility that especially if you just pour it in there and seal it and never shake it, there is a chance that there might be some bacteria or fungus on the top of the leaves up at the top outside of the alcohol because they're floating on the surface that could cause problems. That's one of the reasons you want to shake it every day, is just to completely submerge anything and kill any fungus or bacteria. Okay. All right, let's talk about glycerin next, actually, because that ties in. Karen, what are your thoughts on glycerin tinctures, best method and recipe for such? Do you think a 3-day slow cooker method will suffice for herbal glycerin? Okay, let me tell you how I make glycerates. First off, why would you use glycerin instead of alcohol? And glycerin, I don't know my... It's basically alcohol times 3. So it has 3 OH groups, but it is still non-toxic, has a very sweet flavor. It works pretty good as an extractant, but usually when you buy the glycerin, it is pure glycerin. So it's 100%. So you think, okay, so I would use it like I would use the 190. The problem is I don't want to say it's a big slow molecule, so that force to drive, to rupture the cells isn't there. So you really, in my opinion, you don't use green plants with glycerin. You want to use the dried plants that have the open cell walls and the water gone. Partially because once you start adding water to glycerin, bacteria love it. One of the problems with a glycerate or a glycerin tincture is they don't have nearly the shelf life. Even when kept in the freezer, they don't have the shelf life that an alcohol tincture has. But they can be used by people who can't take alcohol. Someone asked about the burning under the tongue. If you take the tincture sublingually, and it burns because of the alcohol, well, a glycerin will help with that. So, but once you start adding water to a glycerin, it becomes a bacterial feast, and the shelf life drops even more. Okay. So let me jump to a few more sponsors here. Okay, let me do this. Okay, Uncommon Bees. There they are. Uncommon Bees, your supplier of all sorts of bee and bee-related supplies. So including a ton of different infused honey. So all sorts of different things, including, where is it? Their Mystic 7 mushroom and all this stuff. All this stuff is done down in their Jasper area. And let me get the coupon code. So remember, if you use Forking Weeds in the coupon code section, you normally get a 10% discount, but between now and 9:30, so during the show or after the show, you get a 25% discount. So Uncommon Bees, supplier of honey, like I said, you saw it, that my Rishi, I reused their jars for that. So Uncommon Bees, and then of course herbs, and also with the Forking Weeds coupon, and pop over to his website there, and located up in Cushing, Texas, but they have a web store. And what's great about Ricardo is you can set up a Zoom consultation, and he'll talk with you about the issues you're having and kind of get a medical history, and then custom formulate something for you. Those of you who are going to be at Cato Mounds this Saturday, I've worked up so Herbs will be selling the Medicine Man Plant Co. products. So he'll have them in his store, and then we'll also have some there at Cato Mounds. I'm not set up yet to do mobile shops. Herbs is, and so we'll be selling it through them. So if you're at Cato Mounds, you will be able to get the Medicine Man stuff. All right. Oops, come back here. Cool. I think that's 10 minutes. What time is it? Okay, good. Whoops. Back to me. Okay, so glycerin. No water. So you want to use dried plants so you don't take any plant water into it. And then a person asked about the 3-day slow cooker. Yeah, that should do it, because if you put the dried plants in the glycerin, the pure glycerin, in the slow cooker, in a water bath, heat it up, 100 degrees or so, that will speed up that whole diffusion process. The thing, you need to keep the jars just cracked just a tiny so the air can get out, but you want to make sure that the moisture, because you're in water, doesn't get into the glycerin. One thing I've seen some people do, and it's a little tricky, but instead of putting water in the slow cooker, they'll put sand in there and make a hot sand bath, and let the cooker heat that up. What I recommend, if you're trying the sand instead of water, you still need to crack the jar just a little, because as it heats up, the it'll expand. At 100 degrees, it may not, do much, but better safe than sorry. But set the slow cooker at low with just the sand in there, put a thermometer in there, and give it like a day to heat up, just to make sure the slow cooker knows how to handle sand, and it's thermocouples and all that, as opposed to water, because the end temperature and stuff is probably going to be a little different. You want to make sure it doesn't get too hot. So use sand in the slow cooker as the heat transfer, but let it heat up at least a day in advance to get warm. And then put your glycerin, dried plant material in there. As far as the concentration, this one's a little tricky, but just to kind of keep things as is consistent, if you're working with dried plants, still go with 1 part dried plant, 5 parts glycerin. Now, what I do is similar, but I take the alcohol tincture, strain out the material, figure out how much alcohol I have. Let's say I have a pint. Combine it with a pint of glycerin, and then using the slow cooker and sand, very carefully drive off the alcohol and reduce it down by half. You can also very carefully do it on an electric burner with a good vent going, but really the sand bath. But basically what you're doing is transferring all the compounds from the alcohol into the glycerin as the alcohol evaporates away. The evaporation temperature of glycerin is quite high, whereas alcohol is around 92 degrees Fahrenheit. So just a low heat will drive that alcohol off, but leave most of the medicinal compounds behind in the glycerin. Okay. Jason, does breaking up the plant make more compounds in the plant available? Yes. So the more you break up the plant, the more surface area, the more escape routes for the material to, the compounds, the chemistry, the chemical compounds in the cell wall, inside the cells, to get out into the solvent. But if you make the particles too small, it becomes a lot harder to then strain them out. Your filter gets clogged, or the bandana, it actually can get through the weave. So if you make the particles too small, filtering it out becomes a problem. And let's see if you can, I don't know if you can see it, but like in this, I was experimenting, put it in the food processor and chopped it up really fine, and there was dust in it. Oops, did I not hit? Okay, so really, at about regular tea size or coffee ground size, that's a good size, because it has plenty of surface area, especially over 8 weeks diffusion. You're going to get it all out, but it's still really easy to filter out without clogging whatever filter and cloth, cheesecloth, whatever you're using to go. Okay. I guess I could eat that. Okay. Does Uncommon Bees have a physical storefront? Actually, if you follow them on Facebook, you will see all the different farmers markets in Houston that they hit, which is pretty much all of them. And so you can go in person and taste the honeys before you buy them, and check it all out. But yeah, definitely follow them on Facebook and Instagram to see where they will be. So, let's see. Okay, Stacy. So right now we're right at the borderline of the goldenrod. The reason being, we'll just talk about goldenrod very quickly. We're about to have the goldenrod flowers bloom. They have all the medicinal properties of the leaves, but they're also the last food source of the bees before the winter shuts everything down. So I really prefer if people leave the flowers for the bees, and then, come next spring, late spring, early summer, start collecting the leaves. Granted, at this point, that would mean waiting, half a year before you can get it. So if you are going to take the flowers, get the ones where about the top third is fully open, the middle third is starting to open, and the lower third are still, yellow balls, but they haven't opened. And then use the 190 method. If you let the flowers dry, a lot of times what happens is there's still enough water and stuff in them that they will go through their life cycle and turn to fluffy brown seeds, which you don't want. Okay. Stefan, can you use mortar and pestle to break up the plant cells? Again, yes, but if you grind it too finely, filtering it out at the other end of the process becomes a real pain. So again, I like it just chopped to about the size of coffee grounds. Okay. Oh, cool. We have 15 minutes. Okay, so glycerin. Like I said, with glycerin, because you don't want any water in there, because water shortens the lifespan even more, you want to work with dried plants, and you can do a hot infusion. In sand or water. I prefer sand because you don't have the moisture floating around, and diffuse it that way. One thing I recommend, run down to Goodwill or Salvation Army or one of those secondhand retail stores and pick up an old crock pot. There's always crock pots there, and just experiment. They're like $6, $7, and just find one that looks like it's in good shape. Plug it in, make sure it works, and then play around with it. Someone was asking, does it matter if it's a slow cooker or removable? Mainly, you want to find the biggest one you can get, because you may end up with a bunch of jars in there. But again, it depends. I have a tendency to overdo things, so you may not need one. I would say just look around and get one from there. That way you have your one for cooking supper, and you have the one for making tinctures. All right. All right. Last thing I want to talk about is the process involved with mushrooms, medicinal mushrooms, in particular reishi and turkey tail, but also shiitake, maitake. I don't know if I said maitake right, but anyway, shiitake, but the medicinal mushrooms. So the thing to remember about medicinal mushrooms is they're not plants. Plants have that hard, rigid cell wall. Mushrooms have a cell membrane, more like, you and me. Mushrooms really are closer to animals than they are to plants from a whole bunch of different features. One of them being, oh, good. Okay, so before we go into mushrooms, let's do one more shout out to sponsors here. Starting first, let me bring this up, and then that. And you know them, you love them as much as I do. Campcraft Outdoors. So the makers of fine. Where'd my backpack go? Oh, there it is. The durable. Whoops. I need that. Okay, so waxed canvas type bushcraft backpacks, haversacks, gear carriers, bottle carriers, foraging bags, ground cloths. They even have a tarp now, and getting ready for winter. They got the wool beanies. So these things are made here in the US. Great people, great gear. If you don't want to go out in the woods with plastic, these are the people you want, to hold your stuff. Ooh, cool. This is new. They have a sporin for you Scottish bushcrafters. Awesome. Okay, so definitely give them some love. And then also the Fear and Dread store over in Vidor, Texas. And let me put that up. So, I mean, let's face it, right now, if there's ever been a time, well, since the Black Plague, I guess, where fear and dread seems to play a big role in a lot of people's lives, talk to them for all sorts of different survival gear and so forth. Of course, they have firearms and ammo, but they also have all sorts of urban and wilderness survival gear, really top-notch stuff. Mine's out in the car, especially the first aid kits and the SOL products and things like SOL. You know what that means. So, and then they are, helping me out. So help them out, check them out. Great stuff there at good prices. And you are helping a small Texas business rather than, Amazon. Now, if you want to help me, whoops, where's my cursor? Okay. Yeah. Okay, good. So that one up. All right. So, hey, that was all the sponsors. So 10 minutes of me talking. Double extraction of mushrooms. So in this case, because they have a cell membrane rather than the cellulose cell wall, they actually have a fairly delicate surface. And the vodka alone is enough to start causing it to disrupt and rupture and expel the medicinal properties. So you want to take the reishi or the turkey tail mushroom and still chop it up really fine. Go to coffee ground size. If you have a coffee grinder, you can let them air dry. In the case of mushrooms, it's actually okay to put a mushroom in a dehydrator, because you don't need that time for enzymes to open up the membrane. You just want to get the moisture out really fast. So, throw the mushrooms in the dehydrator. It smells great. Dehydrate them down until they're brittle. Put them in the food processor until they're about the size of coffee grounds. And then you want to do the first of what's called a double extraction. The first step is where you mix the mushroom and vodka together. So in this case, again, you want to get yourself a jar and fill it about 1 inch from the top with the ground up mushroom, and then pour vodka in there to cover the ground up mushroom by about 1 inch. Cap it, shake it, every day, shake it for 8 weeks. You don't have to shake it constantly for 8 weeks. You would have, one amazing arm at that point. But, once a day, give it just a good, jostle and set it back in the cool, dark place. Like Ricardo mentioned, put it in the pantry next to your breakfast cereal or your instant coffee or your regular coffee or something like that. And, just to shake it there. 8 weeks pass by. You strain out the mushroom, put it in the wazoo survival. You knew it was coming. Squeeze it out, get all that vodka out, that yummy, yummy, delicious infused vodka. Keep it in a jar. Look at the jar. See how much vodka you had, and take another jar and put that much water, so you have an equal amount of vodka and water after straining out the mushroom. Let's see, which end was the water? This one was water. Pour that in a small pot. Take the mushroom from the wazoo survival bandana and pour that into the water. Shake it in there, get it all in there. And now you're going to boil it. And you're going to take it up and you're going to boil it for almost 10 minutes. There are some compounds in the mushrooms that really, really, really love water. But even if there's just, 50% alcohol around, they don't really like that. They really just want to be in the water. And so you're extracting those water-soluble compounds at this point because they're really good for you. Boil it for 10 minutes, let it cool, strain it out, squeeze it out, get every drop of water. And you'll see now, let's see. Okay. You'll have slightly less water. So you want to take some distilled, boiled water that's been sterilized and add it up to the point where you have an equal amount of vodka and water. And then slowly add slowly add the water into the vodka while swirling in a bigger jar. You may see some precipitation form. That's okay. Leave it in there. You want it before taking the mushroom elixir. You want to shake it up and get that, the precipitate too. But once you add the water to it, you're good to go. So, all right. Let's see here. Oh, yeah. Okay. Of course, freeze drying mushrooms, but not all of us have a freeze dryer. I wish I had a freeze dryer. I want a freeze dryer. Ooh, let me do this. So, Carpenter, supplier of excellent jellies and jams. Let me show you where to go because that list is already there. So, on the Foraging Texas website, scroll down. Where is it? Okay. So common herbal teas. And so this, okay. So we're going to scroll fast. Okay, here we go. Okay, health benefits. So, and let me put the link here. Because really the teas can be tinctured and get the same effects. Herbal properties. So, whoops. Herbs for energy, herbs for headaches, herbs for just general improved health. There's a bunch of stuff in here. Calm. So all that information you want is there. I will also, let me throw this up. And remember, this is an Amazon link to specifically to the herbal making. Do I have the shop here? No, I don't have the shop here. I really need to put a link to the shop back on my website. Like I said, I've been doing a bunch of stuff behind the scenes. Oh, I know where I can go. So, yeah. Okay. Go away. So we have all these different steps. So step 6, the Healer Awakens. So it has the books that I recommend are the best herbal medicine books, and then assorted other things. There's the pot and so forth. So this is really the best sources rather than trying to go through, just throwing stuff off the top of my head. But check that out. The links are there. I'll put this. Oh, actually, I put it up there again. Okay. Cool. All right. What else do we have? Anything? Cool. All right. We got like 2 minutes, 3 minutes left here. It sounds like people like the new format for the sponsors. I like it too. You don't get all of them right at once. So, and hopefully Uncommon Bees and Ricardo, if you want to shout out, if you like it or not, but it's what you're going to get from now on. But yeah, hopefully you got some uses there. Remember, on the Foraging Texas website, I've been adding medicinal properties to all the plants, and so you can see there, and if it works as a tincture or a salve or what have you, things like that. Trying to give you a lot of information. So this is just water, but oh boy. Okay. Let me do this. So what should we be looking for in October to forage? So what's really cool is if you go over, so we start at the top, scroll down, find by use, find by geographic location, find by season. So if you click on there, there's 125 different plants. So they show up just individually. Each post shows up, but you get, I think, 4 per page. So eventually you get down to the bottom. Scroll. Oh, maybe it's 5 or 6. Well, maybe it's more. Okay. And then, you'll get like this last one was what? Oh, Barbados cherry. So then you scroll down and older posts, and that will bring the next 6. And you just keep going through there. So check that out. And you will get what's available in the fall. Okay. At this point, wow, we actually timed it pretty well. So 8:59, perfect. I meant to do that. Tomorrow, donut shop at the beginning of the world, sometime before 7:30 a.m. The doors open, and by the doors I mean the virtual screen here. Goes till 8, and whatever the tribe wants to talk about, we will talk about. Other than that, okay, just forage by season. Fall. Okay. Let me just throw that up there. Fall foraging plants. There you go. Yep. Okay. All right. Well, I got to get some stuff ready. The family will be home soon. So at this point, ending the broadcast. Love you all. Thanks for showing up, especially the new people. Welcome to the tribe. You will find we're a very loving and welcoming people, but not in a creepy way. Well, there's one or two, but we can deal with them. All right. Good night, all, and I will see you tomorrow morning.